Hello, Trinity Episcopal Church. It's Tuesday, June the 2nd, 2020, and this is my midweek check-in and announcements. So, excuse me, the announcements are that the Chimes, our newsletter, should be at your house in your mailbox. If you can also view it online at our website, so it's a great issue. The fun part of it is that we had lots of people submit pictures of themselves in their masks, so that was a lot of fun. The virtual picnic is coming up, so let me just describe how that's going to work. If you'll please submit a recipe for a simple side dish, salad, or dessert by this coming Thursday, that's June the 4th. You can send it to info@trinitycovington.org, that's Lauren's address. We will then publish the recipes the next day on Friday, June the 5th, and this week at Trinity. Then in the following days, if you'll simply pick somebody else's recipe to make, and then take pictures of that and submit it on June the 11th. That's a week from Thursday. And then we'll have a slideshow during worship on June the 14th of all the creations that you've made. So I am submitting a recipe for Flourless Brownies. They're also gluten-free, and they use black beans as the base. So I hope somebody will make my recipe. Joel Brockta is starting a rosary group. That will run from June the 9th to the 30th. There's information in This Week at Trinity about it and in the newsletter. He can send you a rosary if you let him know, and then they'll be meeting on Tuesdays, beginning on June the 9th and ending on June the 30th. It'll be 8 a.m. in the morning. I know it's early, but he's got work to do because he's still a working guy. Joe will also be preaching on June the 14th. But coming up this Sunday, it's Trinity Sunday, so we'll have some special music. So those are my announcements. I want to talk about what's going on in the country. I know this is a very difficult time as we watch all the images of of looters and rioters. That's different from protesters. And those who have been consuming the airways, and what's getting pushed out is that there are thousands of people who are protesting peacefully. And we stand with the lawful protesters as Episcopalians and as Trinity, I hope. I stand with the protesters as the rector of Trinity. Let me speak for myself. Because we are called to work for justice and peace for all people, that is part of our baptismal covenant. And that part of the work of justice and peace is being able to be in conversation and to show that we care. And also we stand with our First Amendment rights to the right to voice opinions. And we do that based on our other baptismal covenant to love our neighbors as ourselves, which means that we we talk in ways that are respectful and loving and not violent. So you may have heard that that President Trump yesterday went to St. John's Church in Lafayette Square, right off of Lafayette Square. So we had to do the geography part of it. So the White House is here. There's a small public park called Lafayette Square Park here, and then the church. So it's about a block away, just a little over a block away. Not far, and the blocks in Washington are quite small. So it was not a long journey. But the two most troubling things were that then William Barr ordered, our Attorney General, ordered that the peaceful protesters who were protesting in the park and in front of St. John's were then dispersed with tear gas and rubber bullets. Now, there's some unclarity about whether they were given a warning or not, but they were protesting peacefully. And there were a group of clergy and laity from the Episcopal Diocese of Washington near St. John's Lafayette Square who were passing out water and granola bars who were caught in the fray. And so that makes it even more personal for me as an Episcopalian to have those clergy and laity harmed. Then the president proceeded to go from the White House, I said that about a little longer than a block, to stand in front of the parish house of St. John's Lafayette Square and hold up a Bible. And didn't read from it, didn't make any reference to it, he just held it up, and then had his picture taken with some other dignitaries and went back to the White House. Now, the Bishop of Washington, the Episcopal Bishop of Washington, Mary Ann Budde, was pretty outraged because she was not asked or told that the bishop was going to show up. That's often a courtesy that the Secret Service will do when the presidents come to St. John's, which they do at least once during their time in office. It's customary for a president to show up. And what Marianne Buddy said, which really struck me, was that she said everything Trump has said and done is to inflame violence. We need moral leadership, and he's doing everything to divide us. I think that is true. The presiding bishop, Bishop Michael Curry, issued a statement, which I want to read. He says, "This evening, the President of the United States stood in front of St. John's Episcopal Church, lifted up a Bible, and had pictures of himself taken. In doing so, he used a church building and the Holy Bible for partisan political purposes. This was done in a time of deep hurt and pain in our country. His actions did nothing to help us or heal us. The Bible teaches us that God is love. Jesus of Nazareth taught, 'You shall love your neighbor as yourself.' The prophet Micah taught that the Lord requires us to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God." The Bible the president held up and the church that he stood in front of represent the virtues of love, of justice, of compassion, and of the way to heal our hurts. We need our president and all who hold office to be moral leaders who help us to be a people and nation living these values. For the sake of George Floyd, for all who have wrongly suffered, and for the sake of us all, we need leaders to help us to be one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. Now that is, I can't say it any better. I don't want to elaborate on that because I think it's perfectly said. I would also, if you want to hear some more wise words, which I think are quite heartfelt, the podcast Pod Save America had on the mayor of Atlanta yesterday, on June the 1st, Keisha Lance Bottoms, and she was talking quite personally, not only as the mayor of Atlanta, but also as the mother of 18-year-old child, a son, and as a person of color. And I thought her comments were quite prescient and really helped me understand the emotional layers of this in ways that I wouldn't otherwise. I think all that's going on with the unrest in the country is a call for us to act, to help mitigate and then hopefully dismantle racism. But we can't do that alone. So here at Trinity, I think we have to take up our anti-racism training again. I know that people struggle with that, but it's a necessary part of it. And our stance is, we're largely an Anglo congregation. Our stance must be humble when we begin to work with other communities of color. And we have to listen more than we talk. We have to come in as a learner, not as somebody who has not as people who have the answer. That doesn't mean being silent, but that means being very humble, because we have not walked in the shoes of those people. And I think we can understand that if we think about people mansplaining to us, and people do that all the time, not only men, or in my experience for having straight people speaking for the LGBTQ plus community. And even when they do those things in love, if people are trying to explain things to us or speaking for us, that can be very, very difficult. And when we enter into multicultural conversations, and this is going to be hard, I think we have to let ourselves be held accountable of our own often unconscious participation in systemic racism. And the way that we do that, it's like we have to learn, as you know, we often say that fish can't see the water. We have to learn how to see the water, and that is often letting people talk about their experiences to us in ways that may make us uncomfortable. We have to work with people of color to undo racism. We can't work for them or on them. And we have to know, again, I said be humble, know that our understanding will be partial because we have not had their experience. So everything we see, we will always see through a lens darkly. We'll never see it quite clearly, but we can let ourselves be taught and be brought along, and then work with people. And part of that is also letting people be angry. There is such a thing as righteous indignation. It's in the Bible. So letting people be angry, and we even may be angry, I am angry, and not try to appease or quiet people in their anger because we are scared of it. Beverly Harrison, a feminist scholar, wrote a wonderful piece called "The Power of Anger in the Work of Love." It's one of my touchstones. And she's talking about it in a constructive way, not in a destructive way. She says that anger is not the opposite of love. Indifference is. She says anger is a vivid form of caring that signals that something is amiss in our relationships and signals the energy to act on that. I think that's a great definition. I'll be talking more about it on Sunday in my sermon. And we have to transform our anger and others, and our anger, let other people transform their anger into action. And that requires wisdom and discernment. And we have to do that like groups do that themselves. And then come together out of working through that anger as a tool, as an impetus for action. Come together to offer common solutions. So we can't do other people's work for them. We have to do our work ourselves as best we can. There's much more to talk about. And as I said, I'll be talking about it in my sermon on Sunday. We'll be hopefully working on anti-racism training again and figuring out how we can be in those common conversations. But it's going to take a while, and we have to do a lot of work before we're going to get there. That's my check-in and meditation for today. If you have anything that you want me to talk about, please let me know. My email address is rector@trinitycovington.org, rector@trinitycovington.org. Please pray for our country. Pray for those people who are hurting, and pray for our president. I hope you're well. I hope you're healthy, and I'll see you in church.